and here the electrons you okay. Now these are the electrons are coming out from here. Now, if you do not give any field then what happens? These electrons, they go on traveling in a straight line, and straight away they fall on a screen. This screen is a fluorescent screen coated with this, say, zinc sulfide. So what happens whenever an electron goes and hits this screen, say at the point S, then there is it lights up. It's called as scintillations. It lights up. Okay, so it scintillates, and you can see the position of the electrons hitting the screen at the point S under no voltage situation. Supposing you give a voltage across the Y1 or Y2 plate. So what is it? This is your vertical. This is your vertical axis. So you give a sinusoidal, not a sinusoidal. You give any voltage. You give a DC voltage across your Y1, Y2, right, along this direction. Then what happens is, see, the electron it will be deflected, and the point S will shift. And instead of impinging at point S, it will the electron will be shifted here. Okay, here you will get the I don't know why it is not okay. I just hope it works. Okay. So this screen, this spot, it moves from here to here. Okay. If you give a voltage only along the Y1, Y2, if you reverse the polarity of the voltage and make it from here to here, that is in the opposite direction, then the spot shifts from it doesn't go upward. It moves, and then you get the spot here. All right. So this is where you get the spot. This is your if you reverse the polarity of Y1, Y2. Okay. Now instead of putting the signal across Y1 and Y2, you give it exclusively along X1 and X2. These are known as horizontal deflecting plates. So what happens is, if you put it across S1 and X2, then you get one signal here. The spot moves from here from this, instead of falling here, it gets deflected. And if you change the polarity of the voltage that you have applied across X1 and X2, then this comes against here. All right. So this is what it happens. This is what it happens. Okay. So if you exclusively either use so if you only use Y1, and if you only give voltage across Y1 and Y2, you get deflections along the vertical axis. And if you put voltage across X1 and X2, you get deflections along the horizontal axis, and therefore X1 and X2 are called the horizontal deflecting plates, and Y1 and Y2 are called the vertical deflecting plates, so on and so forth. So this gives you a fairly good idea of how this whole set, this is put in an evacuated glass chamber, a glass tube, and this is the basic and these are the basic components of a cathode ray oscilloscope, CRO. Okay. Now if you have these are the basic components of your cathode ray oscilloscopes. Now supposing we had a quite lengthy discussions on what happens if we put two SHMs orthogonal to each other, okay, perpendicular. So you go to give one signal along the Y1, Y2 axis, and when give another signal along the X1, X2 axis, both are SHMs, right? What will you get? You will be able to see, depending upon the value of delta and depending upon the relative values of A and B, you will be generating ellipses, circles, straight lines, loops, depending upon the frequency ratio, 2 loops, 3 loops, n number of loops, which can be, see, the screen will, the electron will see, because you will get a figure, the motion will be like this. So because you have put two SHMs mutually perpendicular to each other. If you have put two SHMs mutually perpendicular to each other, then the resultant is the resultant is a Lissajous figure, depending upon your values of delta and your values of A and B. Okay. So you, by this time, you know what is delta, you know what is A, you know what is B. So depending upon the values of delta A and B, you can you get your figures. And how will you see these figures? These figures will be beautifully patterned on the zinc, on the fluorescent screen, and this is how you can get to know and see some of these figures on this here. Now with this, we now go to some illustrations of simple harmonic motion. Now this is important, okay? And I will be covering five. Excuse me, please. There are five. Five illustrations of SHM. So we will be covering them one by one. In this class, we will be doing it continuously, right? So let us do it. So what is it? First is motion of a simple pendulum. All of you know this, but still we will be discussing this in a little bit details. See, if you have your, look at this diagram. This is the only thing which matters, this diagram. Okay. Now, this L is the length of the string. Let M be the mass of the bob. Now you display, take the bob from this, A is the equilibrium position, remove, use a deforming force and remove and shift this bob from here to here, and you shift it by a small angle theta. Theta should be less than 4 degrees. Remember this. Theta should be restricted within 4 degrees. Okay. Now, if you have the mass of the, if M is the mass, then what is the weight? It is acting downwards, is mg is the total weight acting downwards. This force, or the weight of the weight is the force with which the gravity pulls the body, isn't it? So it's a force, it's a vector. Now we can resolve this force into two mutually orthogonal directions. One is the mg cos theta, another one is the mg sin theta. If you have, so what is what? The tension in the string T is balanced by mg cos theta, and therefore these two forces cancel out each other, and therefore there are no net forces acting along this line. But mg sin theta, this part of the force given by mg sin theta is unbalanced. Okay, there is no counteracting forces oppositely acting forces to balance or neutralize this force. Hence, under the action of this force mg cos theta, mg sin theta, this bob tries to move back to its, this is the restoring force basically, which is trying to bring it back to its equilibrium configuration. So this is the dynamics of your pendulum, right? So what do? We have the, what is force? So what is the net force acting on the system? Remember, the tension in the string T is getting balanced by this component of the force. Net force mg, you split it up into its cross and sine component. The cos component neutralizes the tension, and the sine component is responsible for bringing the bob back to its equilibrium position. This is the physics out of it, right? So what is the force? Force is equal to your, the net force acting now on the system, this unbalanced force, or the net force that is available to the system, that is equal to minus mg sin theta. Now, if sin theta is small, you use a Taylor series expansion, and you can write sin theta is equal to theta minus theta cube 3 factorial pi bus the 5 by 5 factorial, so on and so forth. First, so for sin theta small, it is, you don't have to go into so much detail, just assume for theta small, you can assume sin theta to be equal to theta. Therefore, you write the force to be equal to minus mg theta. You divide by m, you get F by m is the acceleration. So what is acceleration? Acceleration is equal to minus g theta. So if you have your acceleration done, now you know x, if the linear, let the displacement be this displacement from A to P, let this displacement be x. Okay, then you can write, if you draw a right-handed triangular system, and this what is sin theta? This is, you can just write over x over L. So sin theta is equal to theta, so x is equal to L theta, right? So just use this trigonometry, simple trigonometry, to generate x is equal to L theta, and therefore okay, now you do a dx dt, you will get a dx dt is equal to L d theta dt, and d2x dt2 will be equal to L d2 theta dt2. So by this time, and I have discussed with you extensively about differentiations and partial differentiations. So these things that should not bother you anymore. You are equipped now. So d2x dt2 is equal to L d theta dt2. Okay. So what is it? This is the acceleration on the system, that is equal to L d2 theta d2 theta dt2. And previously, we've also deduced that acceleration of the system is equal to minus g theta. If you do that, So you just compare it and write what you get. L do d2 theta dt2 is equal to minus g theta. And you take this divide by L, you get d2 theta dt2 is equal to minus g over L times theta. And you substitute g over L to be by omega square, you get d2 theta dt2 plus omega square theta equal to 0. This gives you a familiar simple harmonic motion equation. The remember d2x dt2 plus omega square x equal to theta. That was our equation of motion of a simple harmonic of a particle executing simple harmonic motion. So equation of simple harmonic motion is d2x dt2 plus omega square x is equal to 0. Similarly, equation 7.51 is giving you an equation of a similar kind of the same functional form as d2 theta dt2. Here the variable is not your x, it is theta, because that is the angle which is changing, right, for a swinging pendulum. So you have d2 theta, d2 theta plus d over dt2 plus omega square theta is equal to 1. Of course, your omega is equal to root over g by L. T is equal to 2 pi by omega. So that will, therefore, you get your familiar expression T is equal to, the time period is equal to 2 pi by omega gives you T is equal to 2 pi over 2 pi into root over L upon G, because the omega is in the denominator. Now, these things are, I know it's very clear to you, very common, but very nothing new. But see, two important things have emerged, and as we proceed with the different scenarios, different cases of bodies executing simple harmonic motion, the idea was not to deduce for you, we will be deducing the time period. Time period is always 2 pi by omega, and you have to know, listen carefully, start from here. Time period of a system is always 2 pi by omega. What is our aim? Our aim is whatever the system is, we have to extract the value of omega. Where do we have the value of omega? Omega is there in that equation, d2x dt2 plus omega square x is equal to 0. So we have to generate this omega. This omega is different for different systems executing simple harmonic motion. Therefore, we have started with a very simple system, the all too familiar simple pendulum. But this is, and then as we proceed, you will see that we will always be landing up with, we have to first satisfy that the forces, net forces acting on the system leads to accelerations that satisfies the differential equation of simple harmonic motion. That is, you have to have the functional form of that equation satisfying d2x dt2 plus omega square x is equal to 0. And this omega square, once you know your omega square, which means you know your omega, immediately time period is not a problem, because you can calculate time period from the relation the time period is equal to 2. So you know the time period of the oscillation, because it is a system. First is you get a equation representing a say simple harmonic motion, which means you have to always end up with equation of the form of 7.51, and from there you have to know what is this value of omega. It comes from the conditions of the problem. These things will be more and more relevant as I proceed with the examples, and a lot of physics will emerge, and omega, and then with omega, once you know your omega, then omega square is equal to 8. Once you know your omega, your time period is very easy to calculate, because it is equal to 2 pi root over L upon G. I hope I have been able to explain to you this. Next is the next situation is oscillation of students. Am I audible? Students, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So next is we will be shortly discussing oscillations of a liquid in a U-tube. Now I will take a break. All right. I'll just take a short break. I'll give you a break of 5 minutes, and I will be back with you. We'll be discussing oscillation. Don't leave the call. Me too will not leave the call, but I'll just take a break and come. Okay. What number will you? Okay, students, I'm back. So
Yes,
let
ma'am.
us continue. Now we will consider the oscillations in this U-tube. Basically, this is a U-tube filled with liquid, and initially let this be the height of the liquid up to which it is filled. Okay, this one. This is the height. So if you pour liquid on this, because of your atmospheric pressure, the heights remain the same. Okay, now let the cross section let the cross section be alpha. Now before that, if you give a sorry, if you give a force to this, if you give a deforming force to this, then this liquid height will depress, and so if it gets depressed by say x, then this height will increase by x. So what happens is what will happen is this initial point, this will be suppressed here, and this point, this will be raised here. So what is the total change in height? This is equal to x here, another x, that is 2x. So the idea is, if you have a U-tube filled with liquid, if you depress the height of the liquid by some distance, say x, by applying a deforming force, and you remove the deforming force from the system, then what happens is, because of the if you remove the deforming force from the system, then this mass of liquid which had risen up, they try to come down, and then which means then this liquid tries to attain equilibrium situation. So this height of the liquid again raises and gets up, it overshoots its main position, goes up, and again it comes down, and then this is for this position, and also for this arm the same is true. So what you have the entire mass of liquid oscillating up and down. I hope I have been able to make you clear. This is the mass of the liquid. Okay, you give a deforming force, you depress by a length x, then it increases by, of course, it raises by, it's a uniform cross section, so this also increases by x, and then if you leave the deforming force, then what happens? It cannot sustain, and by the weight of its own weight, that's the way own weight is generating the force in the system, weight equal to, and weight is generated by a height of liquid of length of a height of liquid by a mass of liquid of height 2x. Okay, and we have to consider the cross sectional area and the densities, which I am coming later on. So first I try to understand physically what is happening. So this is because the deforming force is not there, and this is not in a state of equilibrium. Equilibrium state is this state. You can see now two yellow lines which are in the same line. Now what will be the tendency of the body? That will be to come back to its equilibrium state. It will overshoot, and of course this height will also overshoot, and then this will go on until an equilibrium is reached. So this kind of oscillations, we are trying to study what kind of motion is this, and so on and so forth. So let alpha be the cross section, and then this is the main thing. The weight, what is the restoring force? The restoring force is generated by the weight of this 2x height of liquid column. Okay. So what is the force acting on the system? The force will be equal to, you know that if rho is the density of the liquid, then mass is equal to density is equal to mass by volume. So mass is equal to density into volume. So let the density be rho. And what is volume? Volume is height into cross-sectional area. So height is 2x, alpha is the cross-sectional area. So 2x into alpha is the volume, multiplied by rho, the density. This gives you mass m into g, that gives you the force, and the minus sign is there for obvious reasons. I will not disclose anymore. So this is the force. Now, if L is under equilibrium situation, if capital L is the level of be the height of the levels at equilibrium, then what is the total mass of the liquid? This is one L, this is another L. So the total length is 2L. Alpha is your cross-sectional area, and rho is the density of the liquid. So the total mass of the liquid is this. So we are now in a position to write down my equation of motion. What is it? What is my equation of motion? So mass into acceleration. How much is mass? 2L alpha rho. This is my mass of the total liquid, into x is the displacement. So d2x dt2 is acceleration. So mass into acceleration, that is the force. How much is the force? the force is equal to minus 2x alpha times rho into g. If you have understood this, the rest is very easy. So what happens is many things cancels out and you are left with this 2 cancels, your rho cancels, your alpha cancels. You're just left with d2x dt2. You're just with left a capital L here. And you're left with your x and g here. So you have d2x dt2 is equal to g over capital L times x is equal to 0. So what kind of equation is this? This is similar to d2x dt2 plus omega square x is equal to 0. Therefore, in this case, I told you just now 5-10 minutes back that we have to extract the omega of the system. So what is omega? Omega is equal to, in this case, it is g by capital L. So what is omega? Sorry, omega square is equal to g by capital L. So omega is equal to root over g by capital L. And what is the time period? T is equal to always 2 pi by omega. And then so it is equal to 2 pi root over capital L by g. So L is the length of the column. Now if L is the total length of the liquid column, then of course total length can be L plus L gives you 2L. So you can always write in place of L, you can write this to be equal to L over 2. So capital L is replaced by L over 2. This gives you T is equal to 2 pi root over L over 2g. So this is the scenario. Okay. Now there is some problems coming up. I will not do this. I have not done any problems for you. I will be doing it when the tutorial classes starts, so that you get familiar with the how to deal with these problems. So next case is the. I hope, is it clear, everybody? Is it clear, students? Students. Yes, hello, students. Are you there? Okay.
Yes, yes ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now go to the third case, and I give you 1 minute time to please draw this diagram. Draw figure 17. It's important for your understanding. That's why I'm asking you to draw. Okay, please draw figure 17. I'll give you 1 minute time. Okay, if you have drawn the figure, if you have already drawn this figure, now look at this elastic oscillation of a mass attached to a vertical elastic spring. So this is your normal position of the spring. Now what you do is you attach a mass to this spring. So it gets elongated by some distance L. Now what you do, this is equal, and because so, and the next step is, please try to concentrate here. See this mass M. Okay, what is this mass doing? This mass has a force acting downward. This is M into G. This M into G is balanced by the restoring force of this entire spring force, the spring constant, and the restoring force on the spring. Not the restoring force. The mass of the spring is actually being balanced by your this elongated L. This actually, I'll tell you something. If M is the mass, this mass is acting downwards, right? This mass is acting downwards. All right. Now there has to be some opposite force acting upward so that it balances it. And this position B, this second position, this position is the equilibrium state. I'm just talking. I've taken a simple spring and I've attached a mass so that it gets elongated by a distance L. When it moves, when it gets elongated by a distance L, this elongation is a result of the mass which is acting downwards. Now, if you have a mass acting downwards, you have a force, net force acting downwards, you should have another force which is pointing upwards to balance this. Otherwise equilibrium will not be maintained. So what is it? this is given by the spring constant. So because that is the force that is exerted by the spring, which is acting in the opposite direction. All right, and this happens to be equal to proportional to the displacement. Okay, all right. So, and then in this equilibrium situation, again you give another deforming force, and you deform this. So this is the equilibrium situation. Very nicely, the mass of the addition, the mass which you have attached to the spring is being balanced by the spring constant of the force exerted by the spring. Okay, so this is balanced, and then this is there. It's perfectly in equilibrium. What you do is now you deform this and you give an additional x displacement here, and you leave and then you remove the deforming force. As soon as you remove the deforming force, immediately what happens? Now the restoring force tries to bring it back to its equilibrium position. It overshoots, goes here, comes back, overshoots, comes back, and then it goes up and down like this. And we are trying to analyze mathematically from the force balance equations that what kind of motion is this. And if it is a simple harmonic motion, the question number 1 is, does it satisfy the equation of simple harmonic motion? And the second question is, if yes, what is the time period? Now we will be trying to look at and see what is happening. Supposing if the mass is m, then the force is phi. It's phi. The k is the spring constant. Then the force is equal to k times x. K is equal to mg over L. So this is common. Okay, this is standard results from your HSDs. You should know this, that the force constant of the spring k is defined by mg by L. That can be shown. Okay. Now with this, so what is it? We know that what is the Newton's second law is mass into acceleration is equal to your force. So this force is equal to k into x. The minus sign is there for because of obvious reason, they are oppositely directed. So what do you get? d2x dt2 plus k over m times x. This is equal to 0. So what is this? Again the same equation, d2x dt2. Let us replace k over m by omega square. What do we get? We get d2x dt2 plus omega square x is equal to 0, where omega in this case is k over m, root over k over m. Now look, in each case, whether it is a simple pendulum, whether it is a oscillations of a U-tube, whether it is an vertical oscillations of an elastic spring, we are always ending up with we can say this motion to be simple harmonic only if they satisfy this equation. The equations are of the form of simple harmonic motion, and your omegas are, you have to extract the omega, and of course you can see that the omegas are different for different cases. This is what I meant when I said that as the class proceeds and as you get more and more familiar with different kinds of simple harmonic motions, you will be knowing that the basic underlying common concept is you have to know the force equations. You have to know what are the net forces acting on the system. Write down your Newton's second law, Newton's laws of motion, write it down, solve it, and write it in a form which satisfies your differential equation of a simple harmonic motion. Get your omega. Omega will be because if you can write it in the form d2x dt2 plus omega square x equal to 0, immediately you get your omega. Once you know your omega, your time period is just 2 pi over omega. So this is it. In this case, the time period is 2 pi root over m over k. So I hope I have been able to make you explain this. Similarly, we go over to the next case. In case of a vertical spring, we get something called a horizontal spring. All right. So this is very important concept, something called the concept of harmonic oscillators. What are this? What do you mean by this? Very, very important concept, the concept of harmonic oscillator. You will need this when you will learn the basic concepts of quantum physics, and also in crystalline solids and harmonicity terms. There are many things associated with this such kind of this is a harmonic oscillator is perhaps one of the basic entities of physics. So what you have, see, just don't bother about this, just listen. In an atom you have a large collection of regular arrangement of in a solid you have a large collection of regular arrangement of atoms, and these atoms are all vibrating about their mean positions. These vibrating entities can behave as if they are vertical, not horizontal elastic springs, right? And they are called harmonic oscillators. And there are reasons for this, because the vibrations can be shown to be simple harmonic, number one. Number two is, as long as they are simple harmonic, they remain in that state. If the energy is more, if the thermal energy is more, then the amplitudes of the vibration become so more that the restoring force is not adequate to bring them back to its equilibrium position, and therefore the restoring force, therefore the system doesn't go back to its equilibrium position. It loses its state. It undergoes a change of state and transforms itself from the solid state to the liquid state, because of the absence of harmonicity or because of the absence of simple harmonic behavior. So when it deviates from simple harmonic behavior, that is called anharmonic behavior. That is the primary reason why a solid gets transformed into a liquid, because if you give the deforming force, in this case thermal energy is the deforming force, which is supplying the necessary energy to increase the amplitude of oscillation to such an extent that the restoring forces are not adequate to bring the atoms back to its equilibrium position, and hence the atom, they lose the interatomic bonds, they get loosened, and they undergo a change of phase and go over to your they undergo a change of phase, and therefore they go over to what is that called? They go over to the liquid state. So this is hence the importance of harmonic oscillators. And please remember, I focused a lot on anharmonicity, but just to make you remember that in order to stay in the same phase, a vibrating atom is showing the vibrations are simple harmonic. So they are behaving as an oscillator, and these oscillators are known as harmonic oscillators. And this term harmonic comes from simple harmonic motion. So this is very, very important. Okay. So this hence the need for analyzing this kind of system. So what is the force? If you know that the force is always proportional. So you have a spring, you have a mass attached to it, you give a displacement x, then you have x, F is proportional to x. So F is equal to minus kx. By this time, you are very much familiar with the mathematics. And next, we like to know that the potential, how do you calculate the potential? Whenever you elongate the spring, you do some work, and this work is stored in the system as the system's potential energy. So how do you compute the potential energy? It is the total amount of, if you integrate it from, say, from x to 0, with a minus sign, then it gives you kx. Wait a minute. First is your force is kx and displacement is dx. So work done is kx into dx. For dx, the work done is kx into dx. For the whole length x, the work done should be integration from x to 0, because it has been brought here. The geometry of the problem is that you bring it from x to 0, from here to here. That is why it is here with a minus sign. And therefore, if you integrate this out, you get the potential of a harmonic oscillator is equal to half kx square. This is the take-home message. You have to remember this, okay, for your this course. F is equal to, very important, the potential of a harmonic oscillator has a parabolic dependence. V is equal to half kx square. If anybody asks you, or you may get it in MCQs, I'm not prompting you to just to remember and put a tick mark on your MCQs. That's not my target. Just to make you understand the physics behind it. And the physics is the velocity. Sorry, the potential is equal to half kx square. Next, F is equal to, the force is equal to minus dv dx. All right. So this is equal to, we also know that force can be written as the negative gradient of the potential, provided that the potential is a conservative field. Remember, we did it in physics, we did it in our vector classes on line integrals, when I was teaching you the signatures of, when I was teaching you the characteristics of conservative fields. So if F is a conservative field, then it can be written as negative gradient of a scalar function phi. F is equal to minus grad phi, and for the one-dimensional analog of that statement is F is equal to minus dv dx. Okay. So what is V in this case? So V is equal to your half kx squared. So this proof, F is equal to minus kx, is another. So if you know, it says another proof that the force for a harmonic oscillator can be represented as proportional to x or equal to minus kx. This derivation is independent of, here we have assumed that F is equal proportional, F is equal to minus kx. In this part, we have derived that if you have a potential which is associated with a scalar, with a vector field, conservative vector field, then the force can, in this case, can be written as minus kx. Okay. So what is your acceleration? M d2 x dt2 So this mass into acceleration is your force. Force is minus k. It's very simple. The whole thing is there. The new thing that you've learned here is remember the concept of harmonic oscillators, number one, and remember the potential of a harmonic oscillator follows a parabolic form, as you can see in this figure 19. The parabolic potential well for the parabolic potential well for a particle for a simple harmonic oscillator, for harmonic oscillators. So of course your omega is how much? In this case, omega is k by m. So omega square is k by m. So omega will be equal to root over k by m. So your time period is very easy. T is equal to 2 pi by omega is equal to 2 pi root over m by k. All right. So this gives you the second this gives you the fourth discussions on simple harmonic motion. All right. We now learn these problems are there which I will be doing, and then with the next is I think I will just discuss this motion of a floating cylinder with you, and then I will close the class for today. And that will actually end up my, I know it is getting little bit strenuous for you and also for me, but I don't want to keep any loose ends. So we will now discuss the motion of a floating cylinder, so that the next class that I will be giving to you is, again you have to keep your pen and papers ready, and I will be asking you to do the tutorials on simple harmonic motion, and you have to upload it within a certain, get familiar with how uploading and things like that, so that you don't have problems. Students, are you there? Students, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, fine. So just give me 10 minutes more of your time. Just for
Ma'am, your voice is not clear.
my voice, I cannot help it. I cannot be more audible right now. It all depends on the net. Is it clear now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, it happens. Yeah. Okay, just follow the mathematics. So if you have a cylinder, right? Okay, supposing you have a cylinder floating in a liquid, which is let the mass of the cylinder be m, length be l, and radius be r. Okay, and the density be rho. Then what will happen is remains floating in a liquid of densities. Let the density of the liquid be sigma. Here, only thing you have to remember is, if you have a cylinder, if you have a container in which you have kept a cylinder, say, okay, in which you've immersed a cylinder in this container has some liquid. Okay, now a certain portion of the cylinder is inside, and then let the density of the cylinder be rho, and let the density of the liquid be sigma. Now, if you press this cylinder, if you go on pressing this cylinder downwards, then it will be depressed by, say, x. Then what is the mass of the liquid that is displaced? Mass will be equal to, r is the radius of the cylinder, then the surface area is the cross-sectional area is pi r square, then pi r square area into your height x. So that gives you your volume. So x into pi r square, that gives you a volume, into your sigma, that's the density of the liquid, that gives you the mass of the liquid. This is the mass, into g gives you the weight of the liquid. This is the mass of the pi r square sigma x is the mass of the liquid, into g is the weight of the liquid. Okay, so this is this amount of this mass, this is the weight of the liquid that is being displaced. So this, according to Archimedes principle, this is the upthrust that is experienced by the cylinder. So if you depress a cylinder inside a liquid, it will experiences by a certain if you displace it, if you push it inside by a certain distance x, then a mass of liquid equivalent to, what is the mass of the liquid? Pi r square sigma xg. This amount of liquid is displaced. So this is the total amount. So the upthrust experienced is equal to the mass of the liquid displaced. So this is the net upthrust that is experienced by the liquid. In this case, the upthrust is behaving as the restoring force. Okay, so this is the restoring force responsible for, if you give a if you press it down and release the depressing force, then the upthrust which is generated because of a suppression by an additional height of x into the liquid is the upthrust that it experiences, is the restoring force which is trying to bring the body back to its equilibrium situation in which it was floating peacefully in the liquid. It is you who have put an additional force, and you have made it right, and you have displaced it from its equilibrium position. Therefore, immediately the restoring forces come into the picture, and they start. What is it called? They start try to bring the system back to its equilibrium position. It overshoots the mean position, goes on top, and so the cylindrical rod in the liquids, it goes bubbles up and down inside and out, in and out of the liquid by over a distance x, additional distance x, and this motion is what we have to analyze, and you will see that it is a simple harmonic motion with a characteristic time period. So what is our target? First, to establish that the force equation satisfies the functional form of the differential equation of a simple harmonic motion, that is d2x dt2 plus omega square x is equal to 0, and then find out the value of omega, and then find out the value of t is equal to time period t is equal to 2 pi by omega. So if these are the things which will be calculating, right? So we know that mass into acceleration is the force. So what is the force? Force is minus, as you know, I will not talk about this minus anymore, pi r square x sigma g. Okay, now what is the mass m? What is the mass of the liquid? See, I told you, sorry, the mass of the cylinder, the length of the cylinder was L. Okay, so if wait a minute, let the mass of cylindrical okay. So okay, it doesn't matter, it has a mass m, but it is discussed in terms of length L and radius r. So length is given, r is given, density rho is given. It doesn't matter if m was here still, but I think the problem is discussed in terms of L, rho and r, so we can do it. So length is L, which means the radius is r. So the cross-sectional area is pi r square into L gives you your volume into density gives you your mass. So this m is replaced by pi r square L times rho times d2x dt2 is equal to pi r square x sigma rho. Yeah, it's very natural, because we want to cut out, we want to eliminate this additional terms coming into the system. So you get rid of your pi, you get rid of r square, you get rid of the rho, not the rho, you only get rid of pi r square from both sides. What you are left with? You are left with 2x dt2 is equal to, you have to divide by L rho in the denominator, and here you have only sigma and g, and of course x is your variable. So you get another equation of the form d2x dt2 plus omega square x is equal to 0, where omega square now is equal to sigma g by L rho. So time period t will be equal to 2 pi by omega, that is equal to 2 pi root over Lg into g sigma. Okay, and so and also remember that the amplitude of the motion also decreases because of the viscosity of the liquid. This is not a free simple harmonic motion. In your classes shortly, you will know what is a damped simple harmonic motion. And of course, you have this cylinder is inside a liquid, and it is executing simple harmonic motion inside the liquid. Because of the resistive forces the liquid exerts on the cylinder, the motion is damped, and therefore the amplitude of oscillation gradually decreases with time. So this we will be discussing in more details in our next class. So after I take a tutorial on simple harmonic motion, and with this I close the class today. Dear students, I have a software which monitors your attendance in the class. When you log in and when you log out. So I'm not calling your roll call. So that class, this I get it from the Google Meet attendance, right? So, and it is very not ethical also to tell you that I'm not monitoring you. I am monitoring your attendance through this software. So this is a principal reason why I'm not basically concentrating on your calling your roll numbers, because sometimes your microphones work, sometimes they don't. And finally, the least but not the last, and the most important thing is, since you are now undergraduate students, it is highly expected of you that you will behave responsibly, and it is on your own that you will try to attend the classes and look at the state of the attendance. A class of 55, and I have a meeting strength of 32, which means excluding me out, it is just a 31. So out of 31, say it's roughly 60% attendance, means some of the students are not interested. So if you are not going to attend the classes, you will not land up with a good job. you will not be sharp enough. You will not know the system. It's 4 years of your life. Of course, you will come to college. Of course, you will have good time. Of course, you will have your. But please, it's my request from my end. So I'm banking on that the students will be diligent enough and sincere enough to attend the classes. It doesn't make any sense for an undergraduate student to the teacher will run after the student and force them to attend classes. All right, so just motivate, and why don't you make a group among yourselves so that you can help each other out, and also it helps. I've already made my own mentor mentee group because I'm the mentor of a few students from your section, and this is what I had to share with you today.